everyone. Welcome to our session on the do's and don'ts of launching a digital health product. My name is Colvin Stone. I'm a partner at Fox Williams. I'm a lawyer focusing on technology and data, and I work with a lot of technology companies in terms of helping them launch digital products in lots of different sectors. And I'm delighted with our esteemed panel today. Let me introduce them very briefly, and we're going to do a Q&A session. So firstly, Melinda Nietzsche, the CEO of The Body Collective, Michael Geer, who is the COO and founder of Humanity, and Anna, who is the CEO and founder of Zapfit. So let's get started. The first question I'm going to ask, I'll start with Mel. So could you describe your business and the process you went through in terms of conception and launching your digital health product? You know, was there any particular methodology that you followed? How did you stick to it?
There's a lot of questions. Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So our product is, our first product we launched a few years ago in 2018 is called Baby to Body, and it's a digital health product for conception, pregnancy, and postpartum. Essentially, it is a digitized personal trainer, well-being coach, companion to the whole of conception, pregnancy, and postpartum, enabling women to live healthier lives, conceive quicker and easier, get to know their bodies better, and have healthier babies. Ultimately live healthier lives. So we started with an idea. I didn't have an app, and we kind of went to market trying to validate the experience, the user experience, and what women wanted. We didn't quite know exactly what they wanted, so we were kind of, you know, bootstrapping for a little bit and launched an email service. So we were sending daily emails, ended up being to over 500,000 women over about a year and a half. And we had a huge amount of data in terms of where to find these women, so the acquisition channels that were the most important and that were good value for money, and the unit economics were strong, but then also what people were interested in, and that was the most important thing. So we had a bunch of different data points, and then we launched our app. And I think in hindsight, that was a really smart way to do it. At the time, we just didn't have any money. We didn't really know enough about the market. But actually, once we launched the app, we knew exactly what women wanted, and we were able to go to a paid version almost immediately. So I think, you know, the biggest lessons there were, you know, really understanding our market, understanding what they valued, understanding their behaviors while they were using the product. And obviously, during conception, their worries are one thing. Pregnancy, there are a multitude of other worries that they have. And then postpartum, it's really just generally about their own health and their baby. So each one of those had to be looked at separately as a different experience. And we had to take into consideration where they were in their lives, what they needed, what they wanted, where they were going to find us, and what their biggest concerns were. So now, you know, it sounds like it's all really cut and dried, but there was a lot of ups and downs along the way, obviously. But we also, I think one of the biggest things was we just focused on one area to begin with, and that was like mainly fitness in pregnancy. And then we launched postpartum, and then we launched conception. So we were not biting off, you know, too much at the beginning. And I think that's, you know, stood us in good stead. And now we're launching a second product for the perimenopause and menopause called Embody, which is coming out in 3 weeks' time. And we're literally doing exactly the same process. Not the emails, but now we have an app, but we know so much more about how to launch. And I think those lessons have been, like, invaluable.
Michael, your story?
Sure. Yeah. So, me and my co-founder kind of in past lives did, you know, Pete did a social network, and I was on the founding team of a dating site, and so we were very much enamored with the fact that you could create something and get it out to millions of people, and then both of us had, as probably many people that get into kind of the health tech space, we had personal experiences where you figure out that no matter how much success, no matter how good everything else is going in your life, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. In my case, a couple of people close to me, were diagnosed very late with cancer. Pete's dad had a stroke fairly early in life. And so we didn't set out immediately to create the health tech startup, but we did very much feel that like if we could create something that would make people healthier, obviously both we could get it out to more people than we got our previous businesses out to, but second, that there's a business there, because obviously if you're giving value to people, there's a business there. And so we kind of, I guess, had the luck of having that kind of confidence that if we could create something that would actually help people stay healthy for longer, it didn't really matter what any investor told us. We would finally find the person that could, invest. And so with Humanity, we created an app that you basically can monitor your rate of aging, and then very importantly, not just find out how fast you're aging, but actually slow it down. So it's basically a navigation app for your health. And so I guess with launching, we had to go through, so we had it very clear in our mind what value we were going to bring to the user. And that's the most important thing. If you can think through, like, not this is a good business or this is, a nice feature, but like what value in the end is the user going to get? In our case, they could actually finally know if what they were doing was working or not to make them healthier. We had to go through a lot of conversations where people were saying, oh, you're trying to do too much, you should concentrate on one niche, and like all these kind of things. But if the only way that you can make it through those conversations and actually launch the thing that you want to launch is you need to very clearly in your mind understand what is that value you bring to that one person that has your app. There might be all these business models where, okay, you're going to have some data and then you're going to help other people and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. But like, what is in like science kind of terms, what is the n=1 value? What is that one person that kind of opens up your app going to get? And because we knew that clearly in our mind, we were able to confidently go through all the conversations and all the advice and all the things along the way. I think we, in our past experience, definitely found that going B2C was the way to learn very quickly. And then obviously there's great distribution paths, Anna will tell you, with like B2B2C and all that. And so I think in health today, I mean, and we've seen this through COVID, like, hospitals do an amazing job at people that get to a certain critical level of health, but really health tech today is coming in and helping people, with preventive and actually making their lives better and keeping them from the hospital, getting to that stage. And so that's the beauty of health tech today is we're going directly out to people and we're actually making their lives better and we're keeping them healthy for longer. And we're doing it from different, sides and directions. And it's a great space to be in.
Yeah.
So.
Anna?
Yeah, so there's two sides to my story of launching ZavFit. I came from a finance and tech background. So there's a kind of personal side to my story where I've been very interested in health, grew up competing in sport, and always been very conscious of health. And then there's my whole career in working in startup, launching new businesses. I think I was a woman in tech and finance, I thought very differently to other people. So I recognized that all of innovation was very driven by regulation. And as an industry, we were kind of put up on this pedestal and looked up to, but we dealt with this very important subject, which was money. And we never talked about customers, because being in a kind of commercial role, I was always at the front end in conferences and listening to what we were talking about. So I really felt this needed to change. There were some new models that came about when everything went mobile and went onto the internet, but it was still very much focused on complex financial products. I quickly realized that in around 2017, that worrying about money was actually the leading cause of mental health problems. But when I looked at the mental health aspect of this and thinking how much this was costing the NHS and looking at the health industry, which was growing exponentially in interest and engagement. So the health industry was really engaging with customers in a different way to how the finance industry was, but they had never taken money as part of their remit. So I wanted to launch a product that would put money into health, that would help people to see their relationship with money and how it impacted their health. Because we all kind of have grown in our understanding that that money is also, that health is holistic. It's more than just mental and physical. But there's a big job for us to do. We've had a big job from the start to get people to understand that money is a core part of health. And I'm sure you're going to ask me some more direct questions so they don't waffle too much. But one of the biggest challenges that we had was getting people not to say, oh, the banks would love what you're doing. But I wanted people to see what we were doing as a health product. And from day one, I made the mission of the company is to improve health. So I've made a very conscious decision to hire a strong science team to make sure that the efficacy of our product is something that is at the forefront of what we're doing. So was there a methodology? The methodology really came from my own just dogged desire to make sure that we were in the health industry, not in the finance industry. And there's loads of learnings along that way. There's no particular methodology. Having worked in startups my whole career, I guess, just being around it, I kind of understood what we needed to do, but it's just going out and talking about the problem that helped me to start to form what the proposition really looked like. And it took some time, just talking about your ideas to people. We're, as Mike said, we're B2B2C, so we sell through corporates, but we're ultimately a consumer product. So we had to find out what the gaps in the market were, where we could really fit our product in. Yeah, hopefully that answers your initial questions.
Yeah. So Mel, you mentioned, I think Michael did this as well a little bit, that focus was a kind of key thing to launching. So what other sort of top tips, lessons did you learn through, not launching just one product, but the second one?
Yeah, so I think focus is probably one of the most important aspects of launching a product, because you can't test for everything all the time. And, I'm a big fan of kind of doing A/B tests and trying to understand people's behavior. I'm actually a sports psychologist. So this is I get really, really geeked out on how we can change people's behavior, and the color of the button does something, or the call to action does something else, or if you show them fitness first or nutrition first, how do they act? And it's unbelievably fascinating, but you can get completely caught up in testing for testing's sake. So it's really important to understand, why am I testing? What do I want to learn from this? And what am I trying to prove? Just like any
Mel,
scientific...
Do you want to just explain just in case people don't know, what A/B testing is?
Oh, A/B testing is, taking the same paywall with a different call to action on each paywall, and then 50% of your users randomly get assigned to A, which is probably the one you've been using the whole time, and then the testing one, which would be B, or alternatively. So lots of people have their own way of doing it, and that's generally how we do it. And then we, depending on if it's on the onboarding process, or if it's looking at a piece of content or whatever we're trying to test for, we let that run for a number of weeks. We have a hypothesis when we set out, and then we wait for a significant end number and see how many people have gone through it, and then we make a decision based on what's working. So one of the things, I'll give you an example, is we changed, we tested for payments. So we were originally doing monthly and quarterly, and then we changed from monthly to annual. Obviously, it's a bigger chunk of money that people have to pay up, and we did that for 6 weeks, and we saw that actually our revenue had increased by 30%, even though the number of people had dropped, but they were more engaged. So the people that were buying were more engaged. So we switched over to annual. So we're constantly doing things like that. I'll give you another really funny example. So we were looking at the 24-hour kind of behavior of people as they were coming onto the app. This is kind of about a year and a half, no, 2 years ago, pre-COVID. We were in the office, and I had an idea. I was like, well, why don't we just record a video of me saying, welcome to our app, and, I'm Mel, and I've just created this, and, something personal. So we're like, okay, fine, let's do that. Literally with an iPhone, I think 10 at the time, shot it in the office, a video of me, at my desk going, welcome to the app. It changed our conversion metrics by 2%, which was nuts. So we just literally did it in an hour. We put it on the app and we changed it. And then only about 6 months ago, I realized that the same video was still up there. like as rough and ready as everything. I was like, guys, you need to change the video. Anyway, so now we did a more polished version. But it just shows you can do that when you're doing in-house development as well. You know, and I think having that focus of like, okay, what do we want to change today, I think is so key.
Yeah.
And not taking on, because otherwise you just get overwhelmed. There's just too much to do.
Yeah. So, Mike, you sort of said a similar thing in terms of being very niche in the way you thought about everything. But what would be your top tips in terms of launching?
I think this all ends up sounding like a pep talk, but if you believe that you're going to bring value to someone, like finding the shortest path to do that, and not so if you're going B2B to C, if you just get some B2C customers at first, if you get to the customer, that you don't start learning until you actually get the app out, and so I guess when I've been mentoring other startups, what I've seen is a lot of times you're waiting for some you don't think of it as perfect, but you're kind of waiting for it to be, really polished, right? In Mel's example, if she had been like, no, actually, we're not going to put that video in until we can, get a production company and we're going to do it right. It's like, no, actually, it's a good idea. Let's take the video, let's put it in the app and see what happens. That I see stop a lot of people because they're waiting till the app is more perfect, or they're waiting till the thing is more complete, or they're waiting till that clinical study that they want to do and then publish it. Is like, if there's not a regulatory reason for you to do that, maybe you want to do that, but actually get the app out and start helping people and start actually seeing what happens in their lives, because otherwise you're kind of just having a dream of starting, and I think unfortunately that stops a lot of people from just taking that first step. And so the other side of that, just to not be kind of just all in one direction, is when Pete and I were going around, we actually had a couple, not that everybody was giving us bad advice, we're not that arrogant, but like we had a couple people who were like, did you run any Facebook ads to see if people would want the product? And we're like, we're making a product to help people be healthier for longer. What would the Facebook ads? It's like, no, actually people don't want it. Okay, I guess on to the next idea. And so there's probably to the not over testing. Like if you have some strong intuitive sense that something is needed, maybe you don't test that one. Maybe you go to the thing that you have a bigger question on. And so that's what I found to be really useful. And I think we'd have more, maybe more things would end up failing, but we'd have more people out there trying and getting a couple steps forward, and everybody would learn. Everybody talks about like serial entrepreneurs and having some kind of advantage. Like Mel, is launching this new business, and obviously she's now going to be a much higher percentage chance of being very successful with it. But even if your first business fails, you're already a serial entrepreneur. You already learned so much more than the person that didn't start. So
it's kind of launch, learn, and then iterate, and then repeat. In essence, test.
And get it. And get out as fast as possible to just get someone using your app or whatever your website. So.
Anna, top tips from your perspective?
I'm going to say something that's slightly. I completely agree with all the points these guys have made, particularly around focus. I think for me, you touched on it. You get lots of different advice from different people, and you have to really try and maintain good mental health. Mental health is a topic that I'm working on, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And I think as founders of the business, we have to really look after ourselves to ensure that we have, I guess, the stamina for what it takes to launch a product, to keep going. And everyone says, think about how long it's going to take and then double it, and that's how long everything takes. And I can hands down say that is true. And the only way I've managed that myself is by taking the mindset that my favorite mantra, which is trust the journey. So everything that happens, product-wise, investor-wise, you just take it on as, okay, so that bit didn't work, that's fine. I'm constantly looking at all the risks and the opportunities, trying to forewarn myself and try and, I guess, see them before they happen. And so taking one day at a time, not looking too far ahead, realizing that, if we just keep going, and it's trusting that you really believe in yourself, not taking on having some accountability to some key people. But there's a lot of opinions, and it can get very confusing and really affect how you think. So I think staying focused with some accountability and really looking after your own mental health in the ways that you would, outside of work. So just one day at a time, not looking up too much. That would be my top tip.
Okay. And so what about, you sort of mentioned this about the journey and it taking longer than you think. I think pretty much every business I've worked with, they say, yep, we're launching in January, and then June they still haven't launched. So what about actually managing the process and trying to keep to time the sort of boring kind of project management stuff? Any kind of insight into how you try and keep that on track?
Actually, I was just dealing with this last night because obviously our product's late. And the tech team are blaming the content team, and the content team are blaming the tech team. And I'm like, this is normal. I think it's about expectations and not holding on to them too much. And that's with any business, really. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different areas that need to be aligned. It doesn't always have to be perfect, as Mike said. I agree, and sometimes getting something out that you're slightly embarrassed by is not such a bad thing. I mean, I look at our first app and I'm like, cringe, and people go, oh yeah, it's not bad, and I'm like, it was awful. But we quickly learned. We had data. We had real people using it, and whatever we think is great, but our customers are going to tell us the most important things. So I think, having setting expectations, yes, of course, have a plan, yes, of course, have a roadmap, but these things do take, sometimes, stuff happens and it just delays things. So I think as with, entrepreneurs, we have to deal with so many things that you can't control. So my attitude is, well, yeah, just can't control it. So what can I control, and what am I really going to get stressed about, and how can I spin it so that it's an even better story? So you have to be a really good storyteller to make it an even better story. So I think being eternally optimistic is helpful as well. Just trying to see the upside, glass half full, and how you can spin it in a positive way. So that's generally I think it's my job, actually, is to look at things and say, okay, how can I give this a positive spin?
Yeah. Mike?
I was just saying, I mean, I could go through a list of project management do's and don'ts. Have regular stand-ups, keep them to time, don't run over, that sort of thing. I think probably the biggest thing I've seen steer teams off in one direction or the other is when people don't align on the goal, and that can be the goal of the company, in the very early stages, like you and your co-founder, if you have a co-founder, making sure that goal is actually, everybody just assumes the other person agrees with them, and you really need to state it and get it out there and to be like, yes, this is, because when it gets tough, months down the road, that's usually what will break up, because the person, actually I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do that. I think with teams, then it becomes does everybody actually understand what the goal of this feature is, or what the goal of this change is? And the only reason, it seems super obvious, but if it's not stated, if it's not written down somewhere, actually most of the time people have different goals. Even if they've been in the same room and they talked about the same thing and they got excited about the same feature, they don't really have the same goal. And so that's what I've seen, because everything else is these kind of do's and don'ts of, meetings and OKRs and Jira and all that fun stuff. But that's based on this real foundation of whether everybody's just aligned on what this particular thing is going to do for the user, basically. So.
Yeah, and I did a sort of similar session with some in-house lawyers at Facebook and Google, and they were saying communication and trust, because they've got multifunctional teams that are having to buy into this one vision, and that doesn't work unless people trust each other and they communicate regularly. Like you were saying, it's the tech team are blaming the content team are blaming the tech team. But what about you, Anna? Any thoughts on the sort of project management side?
I think, well, as founders, often you're very visionary and you have loads and loads of ideas, and it's very important to ensure that you stay focused on just delivering, maybe a core part of that. Especially also because at the end of the day, the consumers need to understand what your product is, and they can't take in too much at once. So From a strategy side internally, I totally agree with your point on communication. It's making sure that everybody understands very clearly what the strategy is in the short term. These are the things that, even down to a weekly, daily basis, these are the things that we're all trying to achieve. And making sure that I guess, from my job, is managing expectations. So I will be saying one thing to the team, knowing in my head it's probably not going to happen, and making sure that I manage the customers so that there is no disappointment with the customers. An example would be putting out the first version of the app, which is what we call the beta, and making sure that you don't promise to the customers that they're getting this bells and whistles, all singing, all dancing, exciting thing, and saying, look, we're innovative, you're innovative, getting them on side to understand this is the first time you're seeing something. So don't expect, we're in this together, so that then when they get a few niggles, which is absolutely inevitable, that everybody's expectations are managed. So that I make that my job, to make sure that all the risks are managed on the top with the customers and the end users, and the team are trying to stay very focused on just the daily. This is the strategy that we're trying to achieve in the short term.
Yeah. Okay. So with my lawyer hat on, so with a potentially with a digital health product, there may be particular concerns, particular risks. I'm thinking using health data or sensitive data. You could be in a regulatory vertical if you're giving medical advice, or maybe giving medical advice. Any particular kind of risks that you've kind of had to address that are more particular to a health business, and how did you address them?
Yeah, I think that's. It's really important to address and to think about before you create the product. So what we've done is, at significant steps of the onboarding process, and also in the whole, right throughout the whole product experience, we have warnings, and people have to go through kind of like a checkbox, that they've seen their doctor, that they know exactly what they're doing. So we've had to think about that in terms of the whole experience from beginning to end, but then also in terms of what content we're putting out. So we make sure that everything we do is completely evidence-based. I have one person on the team, and we're only a team of 19 people, and I have one person whose only job it is to research and to check everything that's going out. So we literally are super careful. And then there's also the boundaries, right? So we are very much in lifestyle. We don't give medical advice. We ask people to make sure that they've seen a doctor before they come onto the app, or at least they take responsibility for themselves, and go through that process. And we remind them all the time of all of those different warning signs, things to watch out for. So it's very much in the content, it's very much in their product experience. And yeah, we try not, we make sure that there's this really, really strict sort of like no-go area of going into like advice. Yeah. And then data is another thing. Obviously with GDPR, we like overhauled our whole systems. And yeah, we have no identifying data. If someone says to me, "Oh, I'm on your app," I'm like, "Didn't you know?" I'm like, "How am I going to know?" I don't get a notification. So I think in that way GDPR was tough, but it was good for us. And we don't have to be HIPAA compliant or anything like that. 75% of our users are in the US, but we managed to stay in that lifestyle space. So I think being clear about what you're doing and which space you're in is really key.
Yeah. Okay. So
in my view.
Yeah, designing into the product experience. So that's designing compliance into the product experience. Making sure your content is accurate, and then being really strict about the boundaries in terms of advice versus lifestyle. So, Michael, what about you?
Yeah, and he hasn't paid me to say this, but you got to work with Colvin and Fox Williams. He's been awesome. I think, so in another past life, I built out a large consumer VPN, and what I learned during that time, because you can imagine there's a lot of privacy and legal, and a lot of different countries have different laws. What we all learned as a team, as that got larger and larger, was basically there's two things. Well, there's the first thing you should think about is what is actually good for the user, because in some of the places we were operating, that was not actually the top, thing that the country's government was trying to do. And so the second thing, and that kind of led me to understand, like on the health side, and which we all do, is everything you're doing actually making the person, healthier or better in your app? Because I think sometimes because of you need to be very detailed on the legal side, and you're working with lawyers, there's a tendency sometimes when people will kind of push that off to the lawyer. It's like, okay, well, if the lawyer tells me it's okay, then it's okay. And I think it's important, and each of us is, as founders or the executives of the company, that you're actually in there not just making sure that you're keeping above the sometimes low bar of the regulatory environment, but actually, like, is this the best thing for the user as well? Because when you combine those two things, everything becomes semi-common sense. You still need a lawyer to make sure that you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and there's always new things coming out from different jurisdictions. But if you're combining those two things, I see that it becomes much more, and you're also able to bring that into the team as well. Because the team understands making the user healthier. They don't necessarily want to understand all the legalities, but they're going to have to implement some of these things. They're going to have to implement that screen that's, asking for the different permissions. They're going to have to implement these things. And you don't want anybody on the team being like, this is another screen with another text, and not caring about the user. And so if everybody cares about the user, then when the legal stuff comes in, you end up with this actually nice combination of everything. So that's what I've learned along the way.
No, I totally agree with that. I think it is a collaboration between, multidisciplinary teams, legal, product, engineering, bigger teams in larger organizations. And I mentioned the sort of session I did with the lawyers at Facebook and Google, and they said the same thing. It is this collaboration trying to find the right balance between user experience and legal compliance. And that's the case whether your lawyer is external or internal to your organization. What about you, Anna?
Yeah, you've really underplayed what you do, Colvin, because I really sought out to have the right support for our business. We have financial data and health data. So in this day and age where everybody's a little bit edgy about it, I wanted to know, that I had the right support, because it's something that's, I think it's actually a cultural thing as well. I think it's got to be a culture amongst the whole organization. As you said, we've got to care about the users. And would we want, not just our data, would we want that information even, for me, I'm taking well-being information from people, and it's in order to get them to give me the right information, I need them to trust me. So it is baked into the design. I don't think I thought about that early enough, but I really had to lean on the people that know what they're doing, and the regulation changes so frequently that we need people alongside us. It's really important for me to be able to sleep at night, to know that I've got the best in the industry, which is, you've worked with all the top tech companies in the world, Colvin, so which is why we've worked with these guys to make sure that before we put something out there, that from day one we've got everything in order, from a cultural perspective, from a product perspective, making sure everybody, because not all the different roles understand that, and you need everybody in the organization to understand the importance of it.
So let's just shift focus a little bit. And so you've launched. Kind of what next in terms of priorities? I guess maybe then you're starting to think about growth. How does your focus as the CEO kind of change from launch to growth, I guess?
Well, I think it's about goals. So, and also understanding where you want to get to and how fast. So for us, it was about making revenue and understanding how people are going to pay and what they were going to pay for. So we were solely focused on that. And although I had so many other opportunities to do side deals and sponsored content and things, like I literally said no to so many things and left money on the table in so many different ways to focus on one thing. And I had one thing, and I bet on making premium subscriptions work. And I think that was one of the best things that I could have done, because everybody in the business was focused on that one thing. And that focus has meant that we are now able to, we're making money. We've got strong revenues from from the premium subscriptions, which is the hardest thing to make work, by the way. Sponsored content is like super easy. And then also we're direct to consumer as well, so every single consumer sale is a difficult one, but we've managed to make it work. So I think being focused on making one thing work, not trying too many different things and spreading yourself too thin, and understanding what unit economics are important. So what's a win look like? What is, how you're going to make your funding work for whatever you need to do, and the milestones you need to get to. I mean, we haven't even touched on the whole funding side of things, but that obviously plays into it. If you're going for a raise and you need certain unit economics or you need certain traction. So yeah, it's been, there's a lot of information. What I just said, I just realized it. Yeah, lots of things.
Cool. Mike, so how does your focus, I mean, you've had a number of different experiences, but how does your focus shift post-launch in terms of growth?
I think the thing that made me happiest in the last couple months, because we just launched like 2.5 months ago, already about 30,000 users, and you're constantly, as a founder, you're constantly thinking about you need to raise the next round. But the thing that made me happiest, we went into and I won't bore you with what OKRs are, it was just like strategic planning session at the beginning of the quarter. And usually, I would come into that meeting and just feel like, okay, well, yeah, one of our goals is we need to raise the next round, but, I don't want to really make that our main goal. And one of our team members basically came in and said, hey, let's not do that. Let's actually go back towards, our goal is exactly like, okay, changing behavior more, making the guidance even more accurate and more like exact. And so I think that was knowing when to be, okay, yeah, we launched. Now let's not just worry about being alive and the thing actually like works and it doesn't crash. Let's now get back to, okay, right, laser focus on the mission, because and the reason why that's important is you could actually zigzag for the first 2 years, if you're not like that. And so I think once you instill that, and the beauty of like instilling that into your team is you don't always need to be the person in the room. Like I came into that meeting not really ready to like say, let's get back on laser focus, but because we had kind of instilled that into the team, that person came in that day and made sure that we did the right thing, And so I think that was kind of it's one of those great things you get when you build a company. There's a lot of pain and a lot of trouble and a lot of problems, but like moments like that, you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I helped create this, So.
Good hire.
Yeah, exactly. I decided to hire that person. She was my hire.
Anna?
Yeah, we're just launching. I can concur with what you've just said. So before you have the product and your first customers, it's easy to say focus on the mission, because you do need some capital to get the product going sometimes. And, I definitely learned some lessons through that. And the shift that we have now that we have the product and we have some customers it's much easier to say, let's now focus on the business. And definitely important to stay focused on growing the business as opposed to just thinking about that next raise, because you're continuously needing to raise and make sure that your bottom line, your runway stays healthy, but making sure that there's, that it doesn't occupy 75% of your brain. It's maybe just there in the background whilst you're achieving your mission, and making sure for me, this next key thing is, am I making a difference to the people that are using my product? That is my number one. And if I'm achieving that, then I know that 15% of my brain can relax, because I know that when I go and talk to the investors to help, for that next stage, that my job will just be effectively done for me. So it is really important to shift to really focus on your mission as a business. I've said what he said, but it's true.
Yeah. Okay, just to wrap up, because we're almost at time. Very quickly, with the benefit of hindsight, what one thing would you do differently and why? So.
I would have definitely launched the app earlier.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I would go with the same one.
Yeah.
I think we made it too nice.
I would agree.
Okay, right, great. Well, listen, thank you so much, guys. That was fantastic. I hope you all enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening.
There's a coffee break now for an hour. If you'd like to join us back again at 11:30, we've got an hour with Microsoft, and we'll be joined by Hema, and we'll be looking at HoloLens. So see you in an hour. Thanks very much.